techniques and trains their members and operatives to resist, right? So there might actually be some value to strategic ambiguity. Interrogators who have spoken about the CIA's waterboarding and other programs have said, look, the reason why it was so effective, set aside whether it was effective or not, they think it was. The reason we think it was effective was because the person on the other side of the interrogation table was in a constant state of uncertainty, right? They've been told that the Americans are never going to touch you. So imagine how disruptive it would be to their expectations, how unsettling it would be when the attention grasp happens, right? So maybe there is some value. I think there is some value to maintaining a little bit of ambiguity to create that uncertainty when a detainee is put in front of the interrogator for the first time.
That's quickly, Jeff. The next question, yes.
You'll have to forgive my ignorance on this, but is there any sort of statistical data on how often torture happens? They don't have auditors going in and checking to see if someone's been tortured, right? I mean, how do we have any data or any kind of basis for this, or is this all just kind of very macro level?
Yeah, I think it is, brother. I mean, there isn't good information, but information has come out about specific instances where specific people were tortured. It often comes out in criminal trials. The first case before military commission is now proceeding with fits and starts in Guantanamo against a young Canadian Afghan man. He alleges that he has been tortured significantly during the time of his detention. He will try to put that out during the trial. That's how a lot of the information comes out.
We know a bit more about what happened in Guantanamo than we know about CIA black sites in Eastern Europe because the International Committee of the Red Cross was given access to Guantanamo Bay and they prepared reports saying here's what went on. And, the government has quibbles with the description of what happened, but that's sort of at the margin. So Guantanamo, we sort of have a decent sense of the techniques that are used there and abuses that took place or didn't take place there. What about Poland or Turkey or other places where the CIA was running like the stuff that makes the newspaper, right? The waterboarding, the sleep deprivation, the forced nudity. This stuff has sort of come out in a non-systematic way. Part of it was. Part of what we know is because of leaks. Jane Mayer wrote a book a few years ago called The Dark Side that detailed some of these programs. We know about these programs as well because the Obama administration declassified a number of memoranda that discussed which specific techniques are used against which specific prisoners. So we know waterboarding, or at least according to the government, waterboarding was used against 3 prisoners, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Abu Zubaydah, and I can't remember who the third one was. But it's nothing like the sort of systematic, comprehensive data set that you would want to be able to draw any firm policy prescriptions, unfortunately.
Yes?
I know your point is that Al-Qaeda doesn't deserve to be treated well, but what happened at Guantanamo Bay, does that help America in terms of its security? What was the justification?
Well, are you asking about detention or are you asking about interrogation?
That happened there on the interrogation.
Interrogation. Well, so what's the upside to doing interrogation? Well, interrogation in Gitmo was actually fairly innocuous compared to what the CIA program entailed overseas, like in Central Europe. So are you asking about the CIA interrogation, waterboarding and whatnot, or Gitmo in particular?
The torture that happened in Guantanamo Bay, how does that help America in terms of its security?
Well, what technique in particular happened in Guantanamo Bay that was torture?
Sexual abuse and all that.
Okay. I don't believe that sexual abuse was an authorized interrogation technique, which means that any sexual abuse that took place would have been sort of freelancing, like Abu Ghraib type stuff. There's no advantage to that, right? There's no advantage to gratuitously inflicting suffering or offenses against human dignity on a person. Especially if the reason you're doing it is not to extract information in the first place, but simply to demean somebody. The cost-benefit analysis tilts very strongly against it, right? There's no upside because you're not extracting information. The downside is severe because there are public diplomacy costs, quite significant public diplomacy costs. Now, if we're talking about the techniques that were used overseas at CIA black sites, such as waterboarding and nudity and sleep deprivation. What's the upside to those? Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask CIA leadership and CIA interrogators, they say, this information saved lives. People are alive today because of what Khalid Sheikh Mohammed told us. Now, I think we should probably discount some of those claims about the successes of the program, especially in light of the fact that there may be alternative techniques that weren't tried that could have extracted this information. But there's at least some evidence in the public record to suggest that severely coercive interrogation techniques, perhaps not mild, but interrogation techniques that many of us would regard as torture, actually did produce actionable intelligence. So that's the upside. Now, that's not to say that it's justified, because the costs might outweigh those benefits. But there are plausible claims that the benefit side of the ledger is not empty.
Other questions? Well, with that, we've been here for a while, and it looks like our time is going to be up soon. So I do want to thank you all for coming out, and do want to thank our speakers, Professor Sales, Professor Quigley. So please join me in applause.